Hello, my beautiful teachers or students who just want a little bit of more know-how on how to teach yoga. So, as you know, this month, or you might not know, if you don't know, sign up to my newsletter. But this month is all to do with the theme transitions, right? So if you've done a lot of my flows on here, if you've done my online courses, if you're in Dubai and you've done my classes, you'll know that I use a lot of movement and transitions. The reason why I do that is because I love it, for one. Just because the movement can actually help cultivate more proprioception in people's bodies. The more ways in which we move, the less prone to injury that we're going to have. So I don't just do it as a choreography or a dance, as some people slate me for. Now, I'm not here to boost my own horn. This is meant to be a video of learning. So today I'm just going to go through 3 simple tips. If you've read my newsletter, this is us just breaking down the stuff that I put into there on what to do and how to teach your transitions. So I have found that a lot of yoga classes are very much based on the asanas, and they don't give a lot of focus to the transitions themselves. And for me, the transitions are very important. So in reference to my newsletter, how do we teach the stuff in between? 3 tips for you. Tip number 1 is work from the ground up. So if you are moving and grooving throughout your classes, if you're like me and you have a few rounds of repetition, the first round or the first kind of basis and connection that you want to really breed into your students is their connection to the ground, right? It's all about their solid foundation, because if we get the foundations right, anything we ask of them later on is then placed upon a stable base. So this is I'm not going to say protect them from injury, because then people get a little bit scared. But this is how we cultivate that strong, stable base to then build a little bit more freedom, a little bit more expressive energy upon. So as an example, I have just filmed a fluidity flow. I'm just going to take a few examples from there for you. So there is a bit where we do a baby wild thing into a forward fold and then transition into a low lunge. So the baby wild thing obviously looks a little bit like this. So we're opening up here. My transition is I'm going to step down, and then I bring myself all the way up to step forward, right? So this transition, obviously we're thinking about, okay, where is the weight? Where do I need the stability to be in the body? So the first round in which I do this flow, I will make sure that when I am cueing, when I am transitioning, I'm not getting them to think about the opening of the chest yet. The first thing that I want to cultivate within them is the awareness of that arm, where the hand relates to the shoulder, and also the bottom leg, right? We do go into dancer after this. So all through this flow, I am cultivating this awareness in the legs, because we'll need it into the standing balance, right? So first round, I would be speaking to the hands, so noticing where the hands are, noticing where the weight is. So a lot of people like to lean back in this dancer pose. So I'd be telling them to push their weight forward, to make sure the weight is loaded where we need to, in order to cultivate that awareness and stable base to then load the hand and step the front foot forward, if that makes sense. It's the same as when we go into the standing round in some of my transitions, particularly if it is a balancing posture and I'm moving from front and back of the mat. The simple high lunge, kind of loading and pulling back. The first thing I'm going to do when I visit this posture is really get a sense, or help my students get a sense of the grounding of the foot, right? Of where the weight shifts, of the loading of the front leg, of feeling the stability, the bend of the knee, the pushing the heel towards the floor, and then maybe pulsing and coming back. So this kind of contracting and expanding, just firing up the muscles, bringing a little bit more oxygen. So then when we do transition towards the foot, it becomes like a little bit of a float, right? We've cultivated that awareness from the ground. Once we have cultivated that, second time around, I'm like, okay, they've got the stability in the foot. I'll take their kind of minds to somewhere else. I hope that's making sense. Okay, so tip number 2 is think small to big when it comes to transition. So I always plan the main section of my flow first, just so I can get a feel of what I'm asking of my students, right? What needs to be activated, what needs to be released. So particularly when it comes to transition, it relates very much to tip number 1 in working from the ground up and working on their stability. We want to start the movement off small, so people can get a sense for it, number 1. So people get a chance to move their way through it gradually, and also build a sense of trust within the body. So for example, if I know that I'm going to be transitioning from side to side in towards, say, our Skandasanas from a forward fold, what I would do first, instead of having them straight into Warrior 2 to Skandasana, because that's a lot, right? That transition requires a lot of balance, it requires a lot of strength. What I would have them do first is think about how I can introduce that move in a more regressed way and a more simpler way. And this also will help the inclusion of your class, right? Because you show them this option, that option's always going to be there. So instead of just dropping in between our Skandasanas, think small to big. So how can I get the Skandasana movement without putting them into the full Skandasana? Wide-legged forward fold. Tell them to bend in towards one knee. And instead of shifting from side to side, because we want to push the weight to the outside of the foot first, right? So instead of making that transition through the middle, which is quite a lot, I'd make people take half a circle. So we're leaning towards the hands. And then as we push to the outside of that left foot, it's kind of like we're circling in towards the hips, right? And even if you just try this feels freaking amazing. It gives the body more time to warm up towards the Skandasanas before I'm taking them into those harder transitions. And then tip number 3, the most important one, is make sure that these transitions are relevant to your purpose. If they're not, you're just going to be like a choreographer, and it makes no sense and it wastes time. We're already very limited because now in Dubai we only get 60-minute classes, right? So in that 60 minutes, you've got to think about using these transitions to cultivate awareness, to cultivate the strength needed that is relevant to your purpose, whether that be a peak pose or whether that be exploring different lines of the body. Get curious, experiment with it, but always come back to, okay, does this movement, does this transition serve, or will it serve my students within the flow? I hope this is all making sense. If you're like, Sarah, I get it, but how do I do it for this pose and this pose? Leave me a comment, please. Hit me a like, and I'll see you all next week.